All right, we are live, and I am missing Matt today, so I'm pretty sad. But what we're going to do to make up for it is we're going to make the show extra interactive. So throw your comments in on YouTube, and we'll show the comments. Simon Hale should be joining us soon from Altus Wellington in Canada. He has an offering that's similar to what Rebellionaire offers. So looking forward to talking about that, talking some Cybertruck, Tesla earnings, Model Y. Might talk about some drones, maple syrup, all that good stuff. I'll show you my pro stuff on X. So let's dive into some of the latest right now. So I'm going to share my screen, and we'll get right into it. So I'm using Pro on X. So this is it's like the TweetDeck, and I basically put people in lists, and I follow these lists, and I can mark them red when I'm done. So a couple of news items. Washington, the car dealers in Washington are trying to kick Tesla out of the state, kick out all their service centers so they can't sell cars directly to folks in the state. They got Senate Bill 5377 trying to kick Tesla out. Also want to show this video. It's pretty awesome. Tesla just released it an hour ago. I'll turn off the sound because it doesn't really work well on StreamYard. The Omid Ashfar is talking about how saving time from the manufacturing process is super key to Tesla, and that's one reason why they created the Cyber Tunnel, which is pretty epic. I love this little shot where the exit of the tunnel looks like a Cybertruck, and they're flowing out like it's giving birth. The alien dreadnought is giving birth to its Teslas. Awesome. So Simon, how are we doing?
Good. Can you hear me okay?
You're pretty quiet, so probably need a different mic.
A different mic. How's this one?
There we go. That's better.
All right.
How are things up in Canada right now?
They're good. They're cold. I'm just getting back. We're down in Jamaica for about 10 days with the kids and family. And as you know, once you get back to the office, you're just swamped with emails and you're trying to play catch up. And so I'm sort of in just getting out of the juice. But I'm stoked for tomorrow's call. It's going to be pretty interesting and exciting.
Yeah, so let's talk about that call. Generally, people get their hopes up a little bit for these calls. I'm curious, what are your hopes for the call? What do you hope to hear? Let's get into that first.
Sure. I think Elon's going to be pretty pumped. He's been pretty excited recently. So whenever Elon's in a good mood, he tends to pull some rabbits out of that hat. What am I expecting on the call? I think when these things actually don't matter to us, we're so focused, and same thing with you, that we're looking at robotics, we're looking at full self-driving robotaxi, and that's really what drives the valuation of our model. The gross automotive margins, mean nothing to us. They're probably going to come in around 20% or so, and the market's going to go, oh wow, they're making more money than ever. I think the market will have a positive reaction from it, but again, based off our models, that's not where the valuation comes from. But it'll obviously be nice for a stock pop for our clients. But I think that they're going to surprise to the upside on the earnings. And I think energy, in particular, is again will be sort of what Wall Street misses, and then it'll by the next day or the day after. So if I were to thread the needle here and say my prediction, like you're talking about a hockey game, I think that Messier is going to score in the second inning and second period, and you're going to have this assist. if you really want to thread the needle, I think, overnight, maybe we could get a bit of a sell-off on the call. But then the following day, Wall Street will wake up to the fact that, they're returned back to growing their margins. And I think they're going to be looking at energy as well and saying, wow, this is a serious contributor. And we've talked about this over the last 6 months or so, 9 months, and how much energy is making a contribution. And from this new, if he talks about it again and says, hey, listen, we're just bringing on this new megapack factory in Shanghai, and just like he did a couple quarters ago, I'm hoping that people wake up to the fact that that's going to possibly quadruple their energy earnings over the next 1.5 to 2 years. And all of a sudden, Tesla Energy could be contributing 25 to 30% to their EBITDA numbers by this time next year, which is huge. So that's where I think there's going to be a surprise, and I think also on auto margins, Jeff will probably be able to explain more to that. But just if I'm just thinking off the cuff, I go, the Cybertruck ramp, they were burning cash. Now I think they're getting up to production where they, the last quarter, they're probably going to be profitable. And they were selling all foundation series up until this point. I'd be interested also to see FSD take rate. I think that may have improved a bit. And then the big one is if they start talking about, if Elon starts talking about FSD release and signing something in China with robotaxi, or allowing unsupervised FSD in China. That's another area that I think is missed, where people don't realize you've got, I don't know what the percentage is, but I would guess it's at least a third to maybe half of the total fleet that Tesla has is in China, and they're not generating any revenue from FSD there. What happens when they flip that switch and all of a sudden, boom, you've turned on, 3 million vehicles, and the market wakes up to the fact that, wow, China is going to start delivering, and that's almost 100% profit margins on that one as well. So that could also be a surprise.
Yeah, there's rumors that a much more advanced FSD version is coming to China. We'll learn more about that. So you're an early adopter of the Cybertruck in Canada. You were one of the first to get a Cybertruck in Canada, and so you understand, like, the Cybertruck is the celebrity. It's not you they're staring at. They're staring at the Cybertruck, right? So tell me a little bit about, like, the first days of you getting the Cybertruck, and we're going to come back to the earnings call, because I think people want to understand the type of demand, the type of interest there is in the Cybertruck.
Sure. So actually, I'll tell you a funny story. I think you read this one on X, but the first day I got my Cybertruck, and this was, for me, I put the order in, I was in bed at midnight when they released this thing, and I was so blown away that this thing looked so cool, like something out of Mad Max. And I could buy it and own it and drive it for under 100K. At least when they launched it, was under 100K. And so I was really stoked, and I put the order in that night, and finally 5 years later, we're able to get it. So I was really looking forward to this. And then I pick it up, and of course, everybody's staring at me wherever I go. And my wife says to me, do you want to, I got to go downtown and run some errands. Do you want to go with me? I said, yes, honey, let me drive you around Montreal. And so we get to Brown's shoe store on St. Catherine. If you don't know Montreal, St. Catherine is sort of the main drag in Montreal where all the shopping goes on downtown. And so I pull up in the evening right in front of the shoe store. My wife runs in to return some stuff, and people are surrounding the vehicle, and they're taking pictures. People are asking me to take pictures. You've got these YouTubers come up and saying, excuse me, what do you do for a living? How do I make enough money to buy one of these? It was pretty surreal, actually. And then there was a couple of homeless guys.
So Simon, did you say you got to put it in Tesla stock and then you can afford a Cybertruck? What'd you say? What was the answer there?
Actually, it was 2 young girls, and I've got 3 young girls. So I thought, how do I give these? And they were probably just entering university. And my response was, if you can figure out how to help people get what they want, you can have almost anything you want in life. they were like, what? But that's basically it. Help people get what they want in life, and you can be successful in any area. And so then I see two native big 6'2", 250-pound drunk homeless people come by, and they're in a good mood. You can tell they had a few drinks, and they were like, "Whoa, what's that truck? Did you build it yourself?" And I said, no, I didn't, but it's from another planet. And they said, what do you mean? And I said, it's from another planet, really. And they're like, what? I said, no, try kicking it. They're like, what do you mean? So they kicked the tire a bit, and I'm like, no, I'm tapping the side of the Cybertruck. I said, no, kick the side of it. And so they start kicking it, and I said, no, harder. And then right at that moment, as they're laying into the side of the Cybertruck and people are standing around going, what's going on? My wife walks out of Brown's shoe store holding two bags. She's like, what's going on here? And I said, I smile. Oh, it's okay, honey. It's okay. I asked him to kick it. She like shakes her head. She's like, oh my God, Simon, let's get out of here. How old are you again?
What's crazy is you would think people would know what the Cybertruck was, and there's a lot of like smart people who don't know what it is. My father-in-law, my godfather, or my in-law, my wife's godfather, he's a doctor, and he didn't know what the Cybertruck was. So like, even though it went viral when Tesla, did the whole thing in November of 2019, people either forgot that or they never saw it, and they don't know who makes it. There's no Tesla badge on it. Doesn't say Tesla on it. They don't know who makes it. Some people think Elon makes it. No, it's Tesla. Let me hop to. So that's a great story. I'm curious. Do you think Tesla should put their name on it? I think they should. It's like people don't know. Like, how do they even know to go to Tesla.com?
I think eventually these things are so polarizing. I don't think they need to. That's the coolest thing about it. That's just my belief. I think everybody's going to say, what is that? They're going to say it's a Cybertruck, and then you go on, you'll Google it, and you're like, oh, it's something Tesla makes. But it's the one thing. So some people have asked me, like, what are the things that I don't like about it? Because the drive is better than you agree with me. I don't have to go into all the things that are great, pretty much everything. The one thing at the top of the list, I don't like to be stared at everywhere I go. It's a little bit I'm actually having my windows tinted so I can't see in, because I feel uncomfortable when I drive around and everybody's pointing or taking pictures, and I get a kick out of it. I know, yeah, they're looking at the Cybertruck, but I'm not used to it. I'm kind of a low-key person, and I've never had like flashy cars, but I didn't buy this to be flashy. And it was interesting. I was talking to a guy today at a wrap shop. I'm thinking about doing a different color on it. And he says, most people buy this because they want to be flashy. I said, no, I bought it because it's like the most advanced technical thing on the road ever. And it's just super cool. And I'm a big kid inside and a sci-fi buff, and I get to drive a piece of the future. So for me, that was important. And that was important to me, not the fact that people are looking at it. So that's my biggest pet peeve is you get a lot of looks. No matter where you go, and not always good. Like I would say, once in a while in Montreal. I mean, Montreal is Quebec. Quebec is probably the most socialist province in Canada, and Canada itself is a socialist nation. And I posted this before on X. I really have to deal with. There's a significant amount of clients who have called and said we don't want to own Tesla in our portfolios because of Elon Musk. And I'm not here to change their mind. We say fine, we'll swap it out, and we just put a QQQ in there.
You gotta lay down like that, Simon. You gotta fight. Come on, fight. You gotta bring that to Canada.
I talked to my brother about this, and the problem is it's taken years for them to be brainwashed by you call it mainstream media. And I don't I don't think I can unwash their brain in a conversation in
Yeah, in
half.
one call. Yeah.
And so I have a few friends that have been brainwashed, good friends, and I've been sending them stuff like legitimate stories for over 2 years now, and I still can't quite, change them up. But they're starting to wake up. They're starting to look. But it's a lot of work. So I just don't fight that battle and say, okay, if you don't want to own it, fine. But I'm going to continue owning it for clients, and I still think
Yeah.
that he's just doing great work. Yeah, I'm still.
Well, I think also with the Cybertruck, it also goes beyond politics. I think it's purposely polarizing. You had the gull wing doors on the Model X. It's a way to get attention to the brand just through the design. So you're forcing people to love it or hate it. So I think it's okay if people hate it, even if it's not like some secret hate for Elon or anything. And I also notice like some people try to ignore it too. Like they'll pretend like they didn't see it. So I'm curious, what do you think demand would be for the Cybertruck if they launch a single motor, like around $60,000 US? I know that's a lot of loonies, but curious your thought.
Let me tell you an anecdote for so now when people say, when I can tell, so there's two things I say to people that say, oh, you know what, I really don't like it. And I said, oh, you know what? I say one of two things. Either one, I say, well, it's actually normal. I said, most young people absolutely love it. Old people, not so much. Usually they get like offended. Oh, wow, you're telling me I'm old. And the other one I've said to you before, I said, it's interesting. I said, if you have an ugly baby, nobody really says anything about it. They just smile. But for some reason, people want to tell you how ugly.
Like pat you on the head. No, it's okay.
How ugly your vehicle is. No, so I think that demand, once you get a $60,000 range, I mean, it's still not the $39,000 that they promised on release. I think eventually they could get there, around the $39,000 eventually. But at $60,000, I think the demand is going to be much, much larger. I mean, you look at what's the average price people pay for a pickup truck in the US. I know in Canada, I don't think it's so 60,000 US with your exchange rate.
Well, the average car in the US is something like 48,000. I'm guessing the average truck has to be higher than that, just because of like how high they go on the luxury side.
I remember watching some of shows about inventory on vehicles and the average price for pickup trucks. And I actually worked at a dealership many years ago before my financial career, like 30 years ago. People pay a lot for trucks, and so I would guess the average truck in the U.S. is above $60,000. We can even grok it right now, but so you're coming in there at a reasonable price for a pickup truck.
Yeah.
So I think the demand. I'm really curious where all of those reservations went, but it's a big.
I think people are waiting on the price, so they reserved it at 40, 50, or 70,000, and then they don't want to suddenly pay 120,000 for the 3 motor or 100,000. So I think people are generally waiting.
Yeah.
Even people who have money in Tesla, I think generally they're waiting. And what happened last year was like the Cybertruck kind of sucked all this oxygen away from the Model S and X. Also, like people are waiting for the new Model Y, and now Tesla is simultaneously trying to ramp the new Model Y in all its factories. And I wonder if that'll like suck some oxygen away from all the other models now.
Well, I think it's brilliant the way that they've done this. Like they try a lot of different things, but then they find a recipe that works. So I think it's the first time that they said, with the Cybertruck, where they said, we're going to do this foundation series and we're going to throw in all the bells and whistles, and we're going to make, great profit margins on, they're ramping up, so obviously the profit margins aren't great. But we're going to include the FSD, we're going to include floor mats, and whatever, all the bells and whistles, and you got to pay an extra 20 grand. And that saps up all the people at the beginning. They're just saying, I don't care, I want it now. And then that strategy really worked. And because as you're ramping, you have a huge amount of demand initially for these products, and there's going to be a long line to be able to get them. But they actually did it quite well. And now they're taking that with the new Model Y and saying, listen, we've got your, it's not a foundation series, but it's the first series, is a name for it, right?
The launch series, yeah.
Series, correct. With all the bells and whistles, because the demand is so high for it. And that's going to allow them to sell at a higher price and then work through that as they build the ramp. So it's pretty brilliant. But the fact that they can do it on 3 continents almost simultaneously, I think they've learned so much from the ramp of the Model 3 that they're really not going to screw this up. At least it looks like they're not going to screw it up.
I think they got an early start in China, but they were using the wormhole technology that Elon has to hide them, and now they're pumping them out on all 3 continents. I have a Model Y on the way.
What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do with your X? You're not gonna sell their X.
Well, I have an X and I have a Cybertruck, and I have a 2020 Model Y that's on hardware 3.
Yeah.
And so my wife was, I thought she would say no, but she proposed that we lease it. She's like, you can't help yourself with these Teslas. How about you lease it instead with this kind of swing car? So we'll do that. We'll have 10,000 miles a year on the new Model Y. And so I want to talk a little bit about Rebellionaire Canada, and then we'll come back to Tesla, and maybe we talk about some drones and UFOs and Chinese models and all that good stuff. So you're in Canada. You're a private wealth manager. You mainly run diversified money, but you have positions in some growth stocks for your clients, and you also lean on this. Who's the name of your technical analyst that kind of follows the different stocks?
Well, yeah. So we've got James Thorne, who's our chief strategist, and he understands technical, but he's not. And he's looking at big macro trends and really try to identify where we need to position portfolios. I've always, with my brother, the group that we manage, we've always made our own investment decisions because we were at bank-owned firms for a long time. And then once we moved to Wellington Altus Private Wealth, which is now the largest independent non-bank-owned firm in Canada, I was like, wow, this guy's actually he's actually pretty accurate on his calls, and he's making calls that none of the banks will do. He's telling people, hey, buy Bitcoin, hey, buy Tesla. They were telling us the banks to sell Tesla, right? And because it's a high risk stock. So he's been really good at looking at macro calls. And then I also share posts of Rich Ross, and we buy research from ISI, and they have some really great analysts, and we buy from many different firms, but he happens to be the top technical analyst for 5 or 6 years running on Wall Street. So he's pretty bang on his calls. He's talking about short-term moves. I know people on X care about that. I'm always looking at, next 5, 10 years. I'm like throwing darts if I guess where a stock is going short term. Yeah. So in terms of, Wellington Altus, we manage money for mostly Canadians, some abroad, usually connections to Canada in some way. A couple hundred families we manage. And what has happened is, myself included, is I took on a large position in Tesla and accumulated over time. And then, I talked to my brother and I said, if I'm willing to do it for myself, why am I not willing to share that with clients? So we've never advised our existing book of clients to say, hey, you need to be seriously overweight. Though right now in our portfolios, we're between 13 and 18% weighted in Tesla. And then we've never been above 10% before.
Mm-hmm.
So we're pretty overweight as it is. But we do have a few clients who know us quite well, and they've said, what do you do? I said, well, I've got these portfolios that I run for myself and my family, but I also concentrate on a few names like Tesla, Nvidia would be one of them, Amazon. But Tesla's my single largest holding. And then after going on, I decided to go on a couple spaces, connected with you, talk with Herbert as well. And the reason I reached out and decided to chime into some spaces and go on with Herbert was I felt that there wasn't enough guys like us talking about what's the retail experience. And because they were giving, retail investors were giving portfolio managers and investment advisors a really hard time.
Yeah.
Because they said, why are they getting pushback? Why can't they just stand up? I said, listen, it's actually not that easy. We as portfolio managers actually get a lot of pushback from our firms, from compliance, and from clients in particular. So, I'm not defending Ross Gerber in any way, but
the short of it is that you and your brother are willing to take on clients that have concentrated positions in Tesla, and to support them. If they want to have a concentrated position, you're not going to force them to sell their Tesla or not, like or otherwise you won't provide any services like a lot of advisors.
Correct. So what we realized was that all the banks in Canada, bank-owned firms, and there's 6 big bank-owned firms, and they basically manage 90% of the wealth in Canada. And they bought all the wealth managers. And so we're realizing that they're telling all their clients that you need to sell this, you need to diversify, and you need to move into our portfolios, our mutual funds. And we said, wait a minute, like, I don't do that myself, but these people still need financial advice. Right. I mean, if they're going to do their own research on Tesla and they're comfortable holding it, and I'm comfortable holding it, they still need financial planning. They still need tax planning. They need to understand, like, how are you getting money out of your RIFs and your RSPs or 401ks in your case? So there's a lot of wealth management advice that they require and need, especially if they own Tesla for a while and they become millionaires or rebellionaires, if you want to call it that. I like that term, rebellionaires. And so,
and by the way, your name is an anagram of Lion's Hammer. That's pretty sweet. If you say Mr. Simon Hale, you got Lion's Hammer in there. So Lion's Hammer is pretty sweet, Mr. Simon Hale. So yeah, Matt and I, we can't serve people in Canada for a couple of reasons. There's rules around newsletters that are pretty punitive in Canada. Also, if you're a foreign financial advisor, as I understand the rules, literally, if we want to serve anyone in Ontario, the tax is 100% of revenues. I don't know if that's true. I read it on the internet somewhere. So, like, literally, we'd have to serve people in Ontario for free, and I'm just like, we're not dealing with this. So, this isn't a recommendation or an endorsement, but if you have concentrated positions in Tesla or in Nvidia, you may want to check out Simon Hale and Wellington Altus, private wealth in Canada, and they can help you out with that. And they have experience with selling covered calls, and I think they're thoughtful on looking at trimming and adding some other things like that, but also financial planning so that you're not missing anything beyond your investments. Is there any like nutty thing you've done with financial planning for a client that's been like had a concentrated position in Tesla? Any wild examples or?
Sure. Well, it's quasi, it's questionable, but you'll never have. So, for example, we had a number of clients with very large positions. They've accumulated over time, and then we're talking like April last year, and these clients have a number of properties in Europe which they were selling, and they were in Canada. Our capital gain rate has just risen from 25% to 33%, which it'll actually won't go through based on my prediction, because we're having some changes in our parties. But at the time, that was the status quo. So you needed to sell properties before June 1st. And so these clients were selling, brother and sister, they were selling some properties, a couple $1 million in capital gains. And we needed to find ways to offset those capital gains with capital losses. And the way I think it works the same in the U.S. If you have, $100,000 of capital gains, but then $100,000 of loss over here, it's a net, net. And so what we were doing was we said, well, what can we do to offset some of those gains on the properties they sell after June 1st to eliminate, to lower that tax burden? And at the time, Tesla was trading at $180 a share or something, and we accumulated, maybe their cost was around, $250 or something like that. But they had significant amount. And so we were actually approaching earnings season, and because Tesla is so volatile, I've never done any tax loss selling on Tesla. 30 days, Tesla can move.
Yeah, that's hard. That's a dicey situation.
Exactly. So I've never
sell it and then have to wait 30 days to rebuy it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I had one client in December 2022 that insisted, and they sold it $120 and had to buy it back 180 30 days later. And I was against my advice, and actually that person left, actually.
Yeah.
Not because of us, but because she hated Elon Musk, and she said, I can't stand Elon Musk, and I don't want to work with you anymore. But that's another story. So these two clients, they had this, and so what we did was we were actually approaching their April earnings call, and so we ended up selling their Tesla stock, taking the capital loss, but then we bought options at a premium, obviously, and we bought options at, I think it was a 30-day expiration, and then we also sold puts at the same time, and the puts offset the cost of the calls that we purchased. And what actually happened was the stock ripped higher after the earnings substantially, maybe 15-20% over those 30-day period. The client still was able to crystallize the tax loss. And because we were trading in options, it would not be considered a superficial loss. And so that actually really helped their tax situation. And they were not out of Tesla for that period of time. And it didn't cost them anything in terms of paying a premium to buy an option on the call. So it worked out. Now, to be honest, if you were to go through a forensic audit, CRA would come in and say, you know what, you still had exposure because of the derivative setup, but 20-25 years I've been doing this, that's never happening. And to be honest, my wife, who's an accountant, and her best friend is a CRA accountant. CRA is Canada Revenue Agency, so I do get the inside of like how they operate. They've even come to me and asked me at times to say, what is this person doing? Not from a CRA perspective, but my wife was doing audits for a large holding company in Canada, and even accountants don't understand how options work in terms of gains and losses. So I know like firsthand what they're thinking and how they look at things. And they're not, they look at this and they just go, I have no idea what that is, but it wasn't Tesla, it was an option. That being said, it was a strategy we implemented. It was kind of funky. It probably saved the clients a few $100,000 in taxes as a result of it, and they still got to hold on to their Tesla shares.
Yeah. So what Simon is saying is they sold out. You know, when you're long the stock, it looks like this, and when they put on this options position, it looks like this. Like it's a risk reversal. So it goes like this, and it goes like that, and then like that. So it's not a. It's like the opposite of a collar. So you're short the put, which looks like that, and then you're long the call, and you have like different strikes. So that's what the options position looks like. So sounds a little complicated, understandable. So I should say, Simon and I are financial advisors. We do not have a business relationship. This is not financial advice. Past performance is no indication of future returns. And all that stuff. You'll see our disclaimers at the end. Simon is also a Rebellionaire creator on X. So you can see him at, what is your handle on X?
Simon Hale 007.
Whoa, okay. Are you a Bond fan?
Totally, my wife and I. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
And that it's probably the same thing with Alexander Mertz or Tesla Boomer Mama. You open up an account on Twitter at the time to try it out, and you're like, oh, I'll just throw a name in there, right? It wasn't business related. And my old picture used to be me with a ski mask on. My wife says, you know what? People are starting to pay attention to this. You probably should put a picture that's a little bit more professional. I said, but I'm not professional, honey.
Yeah, I've kind of been fighting that my life. So let's talk a little bit about Tesla earnings. I think you mentioned some stuff about energy. I think it'd be great if they talked about what production is like at the Megafactory in Shanghai, and what the real capacity is there. Is it double what Lathrop is? Is it triple? What are their thoughts on how quickly they'll ramp that up? I think that would be fairly bullish. Maybe some commentary on Model Y orders, even though it's early and those numbers will look rather silly compared to like the overall demand. Like you can't just like take orders over the last 2 weeks and annualize them. So like that's not how it works, right?
I think I've heard that. I don't think they'll give us any number. I think they're just going to say the same thing they've said before. The last time when the Model Y was in such high demand, the demand far outweighs the supply that we're able to ramp. I think that's what they'll say.
Yeah, that makes sense. So let's see here. Here's a question. Honest question. Are those in the Tesla bubble burying their heads when it comes to the undeniable, unfortunate brand damage caused by 50% of the population deeply despising Elon? I don't think 50% do. I would say like if you're further on the political spectrum both ways, so maybe it's like 20% don't like Elon. There's people who don't like him just because he's not a buttoned up CEO type. He doesn't read off a teleprompter, right? What are your thoughts on Elon wading into the undeniable wading into politics?
Well, I'm just reading a text I sent to my best friend yesterday. He was asking me because he read an article on Yahoo Finance. And so my take on this, and this is just my, my spidey senses, whatever, everything that I take in terms of like, I think that there's a small 10 maybe 15% that really are very vocal about their political views, and they become active in different areas in order to express those views. And I think that the majority of people don't really care. And so we only hear those 10 or 15 or 20%. And the rest are sort of like, look, whatever. And then in terms of damaging the reputation, this is what I said to my friend yesterday, is I said, I think for every person that you lose that wants to sell their Tesla or not buy one, I think there's actually going to be more that are going to say, man, I never thought about this because this Elon guy is a cool guy. Wow, what's a Tesla? What is this? And they go and test one. So I think there's more people that are actually changing their minds about buying an EV. The entire, if you want to call it right wing or center, Republicans, many of them wouldn't in the past, and now they're going, who's this Elon guy? I want to go buy one of those Cybertrucks because this is the best, most recognizable sign for America. So I actually think there's more people that are willing to buy a Tesla for every person that decides that they don't want one. That's my take on it. But we'll see in a year or two. But I've been defending the demand for these things with clients for the last 6, 7, 8 years. There's always been these stories. I don't think they've ever. Yeah. There's always a reason why people aren't buying these. And yet,
the Model Y is the #1 selling car in the world. It may have a little hiccup because they are ramping in 3 factories simultaneously, but the demand is going to be much higher for the new Y. Have you been in the new 3? Like
twice.
Yeah, so you understand how much quieter it is.
I've taken them for
how much better the suspension is.
And I really wanted to buy one because I couldn't believe how quiet it was. And I've owned two Model Ys, and the China Model Y, which was the last one we had, my wife was driving, was substantially better than the one from out of Fremont. And so, and then when the new Model 3 came out, I said, I got to go test drive it. I test drive it as soon as it came. And then I said, you know what? I think I want to buy one of these. And I went and test drove it again. And it was so quiet and so much value in what you were getting, but it was just a little bit too small. And I put bikes in the car and stuff. So I bought a Model S Plaid instead. But to be fair, the technology and if you want to buy the best of Tesla, at the time it was the Model 3, and then and the Model Y is going to be the best of the best Tesla.
Yeah,
it's better hardware. It's going to be better dampenings. But I just couldn't believe it how quiet it was to drive and smooth, and it didn't have air suspension. There were no rattles. It was really nice. And from what I'm hearing in some of the reviews, that's the case with the Model Y. It's not about the looks and all the features when people are doing these reviews and walking around. It's more about.
I thought it was really unfortunate that those previews came out, because typically the first thing someone hears, they latch on to it. So they see all these previews where people are listing dozens of features, and they're going to latch on to, there's all these minor updates, or really the biggest updates are when you're in the car, you're hearing how much quieter it is. You're feeling that suspension where you're not feeling every ripple in the road, and like you're feeling the nicer seat, versus the older seat that used to be in the 3 and the Y.
I want to see. I'd love it. I'm pretty sure they're going to send Jason. Just looking to pronounce his last name. Camisa. Because he won awards on the Cybertruck review, and I watched it again 6 months later, and I was like, this is such a great video. I recommend everybody watch it a second time, especially if you're a Cybertruck owner. Go out and watch it again. You'll appreciate what he's done with it.
Yeah, if our producer could find that the Jason Camisa review, you can drop that in.
And if he does the review, what's great about Jason is he's not an EV guy. He loves big. I was watching a video with him last night with Jay Leno, and he has his own BMW. It was a 93, 92. It was a V12 manual transmission, and they're out there driving this thing around. And like, so Jason's a car guy, and when he comes out and does a review, he's like, I don't like EVs, but this is the hands down best car. And he did the same thing with the Model 3.
Yeah.
Right? Model 3 Performance. He's like, this thing just wipes mops the floor. There's no reason anybody would buy a BMW M3 anymore.
Right.
And so and he's so enthusiastic, and it's a car guy. So I think once that gets out there and you get some car guys doing reviews, I think that will help. But at the end of the day, even after I watched all the reviews of the Model 3, you still got to go drive it. And then you go, oh, wow, this is luxury. This is nice.
So let's stay on the controversy with Canada here. What do you think about this Pierre guy? Do you think there's a chance that he could actually win as Canadian Prime Minister, like if you were to have an election in October?
I think it's a very strong chance. I think he's leading in the polls. I was having a discussion at lunchtime with my brother, but I hope. I mean, anything can happen over a year. But right now we've got Mark Carney, who was the former governor of Canada, and he went over to England and ran the Bank of England, and now he's back, and they're going to put him in there. I call it the good old switcheroo. But if he could have a chance, but I'm hoping Canadians, and I suspect there's this shift right now in mentality across the world, not just the United States, that's saying, no, enough of this party, enough of this garbage of promises and higher taxes. And so, and I think that message is being given. I think people are done with the Liberals for now. Anything can happen 4 years from now. But I suspect if I were to put money on it, if you were to call an election tomorrow, it would be Conservative and Pierre Poilievre. That would win the election. And what I would like for Poilievre is he is still a serial or a lifetime politician. He's not a Donald Trump. He's not a business leader. But if somehow they could start putting really great people in place in Canada, qualified people to run different industries, then it makes me hopeful of the direction of the country. So, for example, our previous finance minister, Chrystia Freeland, she was a reporter. Like, she didn't have she had no experience in finance or business, and she ran deficits of massive amounts. It's nothing compared to the deficits you're running south of the border, but for Canada it was big, and it's difficult, and there's no reason for it. So we had people, and then our Prime Minister Trudeau had a name Trudeau because his father was Prime Minister, but he was a high school teacher, like a drama teacher. Like, he had no experience, not even experience in politics. They just dragged him out, and said, "Hey, you look good, and you speak French, and your father has a good name." So I don't say it's his fault. I never liked him, but we put people in places or in charge that had no experience. In Canada, we're a big business, and we should have people that understand big business running the country, policies that make sense, just common sense. That's it. I don't like the posturing right now that Canada and Europe, so Canada's now looking at chumming up with Europe to let's fight the tariffs. Now, it's not Canada, it's the Canadian politicians. And so what's happening, I see right now, is they're just jockeying for position to be able to score some political points to say, see, we stood up to big bad Trump, because I think the latest poll says like 62% of Canadians dislike Trump. So they're using that to their benefit, not to the benefit of the country, but to the benefit of their political capital, in order to gang votes and gang appreciation.
Yeah.
But that's not good for the country. You don't stand up against the strongest, richest, most powerful country in the world, who's our neighbor. You just say, okay, what do you need, Mr. Trump? You want us to help at the borders? Sure, because we've never done it before.
Mm-hmm.
right? I don't think Trump has unrealistic requests from Canada. Secure the border, which we've never done, and and have decent trade. Right now things come in from the States, we tax a lot of the things, or we put tariffs on them. Things go down to the States, no tariffs. That's not fair.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, that's sort of my view.
I think America benefits by a strong Canada. So stronger together for sure.
Totally.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about this Chinese model, this DeepSeek R1. I think that set you off a little bit. Definitely, they were exaggerating about the cost, but in their own paper, they said it was, if you did this and you discounted like all the costs it took us to get us to this point, and you got a special discount from your buddy on the training cost, from your buddy Xi Jinping, then it would have been only $5 million. So I think we understand, it would have been at least 15 million. So people feel like, there's this huge sell off in Nvidia. You own some Nvidia as well. People think, okay, well, if they're going to solve or greatly reduce the cost on these text large language models, then that affects the demand for Nvidia. But you and I are also in Tesla, and we know that Tesla needs to analyze a ton of video, and you need a whole lot of compute to sort through video and make that useful and do useful real world things with. What's your thoughts about, maybe we can kind of pare the discussion down. What's your thoughts if we get like really efficient on these language models? What do you think the impact is on Nvidia longer term?
I think that's the big question, is what's the impact? When is the demand going to start to slow? That's the $1 million question, right? Mm-hmm. I think that the large language models is becoming commoditized. I actually think it's really good for businesses like Amazon, like Facebook, like Google, like Tesla, that needs to buy a ton of compute. If they've figured out ways to make these more efficient and effective, then that just means that they can increase the capacity of that compute. It doesn't necessarily mean that they need less compute. It just means that they can ramp up the power of these much more efficiently and effectively. Mm-hmm. Now, do I think that the demand is going to go down? I don't think at all.
I think you raise a good point, because like every time recently that Tesla has added compute, they have delivered immediately with new models and big improvements to their self-driving. It's been noticeable. Like last January, they got a big upgrade in their compute. Then we got version 12, and then in October they got really close to completing Cortex in Texas, and then we got version 13 shortly after that. So you're right. Like if they can get just a lot more efficient with it, even with video, then they can do a lot more with it right away.
Yeah, if you can do more with less, it still doesn't mean they're going to start asking for less. There's a race here.
Maybe you buy more then. If it's useful, you buy more.
It's like, yeah, look at the usefulness of this. And then the other thing is, we're always looking at, it's important to realize that when you look at the total addressable market now, but when you drive down the cost by an order of magnitude, that market grows, right, substantially. So you can't just look at what the market is now. What if you bring down the cost substantially, that market is going to grow in effect. Just like the argument you've heard, well, how many robots do we need in the world today? And they say that, but if you can bring up the usefulness and down the cost of robots and humanoid robots in particular, that market grows significantly. Yeah. And I think the same thing with AI is, as AI starts to evolve and you bring down the cost and the usefulness of it, we're also going to people are going to find other ways to use it and monetize that, because we're still in the first derivative, right? It's right now, it's the only people making money really is just the compute, like Nvidia. They're making the lion's share. But then all of a sudden,
I think there are people who are early to applying this, where they are making some money off of, applying it to their business.
yeah,
We've gotten good.
you're right. And Amazon in particular, even they just book it on their system, and the second they add compute, they're able to sell that out and use the AI within immediately.
Yeah, we've done well with AI. It's definitely helped us like go through stock options data. We're now using it privately to go through emails. So there's a way to do AI where you're not sending your data out to others. And we're going to have it analyze bunch of old emails and just surface important information and use that to help build out dossiers on our clients. So we have, different sources. Email is probably the noisiest, and it's probably dumb for us to start with that, because we have all these other things like, financial planning summaries that are like so information rich. You know how information rich those are. We should probably start with that, but we're starting with emails and, seeing how it does. Yeah, I think there's a ton of value from using AI as a business. There's a lot of data we have that we intend to have LLMs look at privately. Have you thought about doing any of that yet? Are you playing around with large language models yourself or others in your business?
Yeah, we are. So we're using Gemini. We're basically testing them to really see what their capabilities are. We just want to be on top of it, and it's interesting to watch like one leapfrog the other and then the other. So they just all keep getting better and better. And 6 months ago, I thought it was game over, and Microsoft and OpenAI were the leaders, and they never be caught. And then Grok comes out, and they make something that's so impressive in such a short amount of time, and that's Grok 2.0. Imagine what 3.0 looks like. And then Gemini, we thought, we started trimming Google because we were like, oh man, they're done. They're not going to cannibalize their business. Everything. All of a sudden, we start seeing the results, and we're like, oh, maybe we made a mistake. So it's been interesting to watch the race. I will say this in terms of what we saw yesterday in the news. One of the sort of second effects of this could be, we say, what would be at risk at Nvidia is, what if it actually comes out and says, yes, they have 50,000 or 100,000 of the Nvidia H100 clusters. How did they get it? And then you remember a couple of years ago they were cracking down on what can be exported from Nvidia to China, and the stock took a hit. And I think that could be a concern, is what if all of a sudden they say, you know what, this is American security, and you can't export these from the United States at all. And we need to track every single one of these that is produced. That could impede. I mean, you already see it happening with ASML, right? They're really cracking. The government basically decides what gets shipped out and what doesn't. And that's been affecting their business, but the demand is still there. My argument, and I've talked to my brother about this, I said, do you really think the demand's going to go away? He goes, yeah, no. I mean, right now you've got mega cap tech. They're trying to buy as many of these, even if Elon trying to jump to the front of the line to get as many as they can. But it's perception, and when the market, it's perception. When the market hears they're not going to be able to ship anything to China, you could see a hiccup. So that could be a concern down the road if the government really decides to crack down on these and say, hey, it's a national security risk.
Yep. And what Simon's talking about, ASML, they make the advanced lithography machines that allow Taiwan Semi to have that huge tech advantage they have, and making things very efficiently on the wafers and the chips. and those are called devices. And the lithography like cuts it out on a wafer and all that, and it's like super crazy technology. So he is Simon Hale with a Rebellionaire North, otherwise known as Wellington Altus Private Wealth. You can find him at Simon Hale 007 on X. You can also see him frequenting Herbert's channel. Herbert's has him on quite a bit.
Yeah, I'll be on there tomorrow actually for the earnings call with a couple of folks. Yeah.
Good luck with that. I'm hoping there's some fireworks or some positive announcements. And with that, I'm going to say bye for now.